Okay, here is a standard sort of IGCSE graphing question. So you're given some empty axes, but they do have numbers on them, so it indicates the maximum value on and the minimum value on each axis. You're given f of x equals 10 cos 20x, and you're told this is the domain of interest. So it says x is greater than or equal to minus 15, and it's smaller than or equal to 15. So this is the domain, which is confirmed by these things in here. So part A, on the diagram, sketch the graph of y equals f of x, and that's for 3 marks. So the key thing with this, firstly, as you should always be doing anyway, on your calculator, if you're in an exam, it's your calculator should have been reset. Once it's been reset, it will be in radian mode. So what you need to do, you need to change that back to degree mode. So you're going to go menu and setup, and you're going to go down to the angle, and if it says rad, you're going to turn it into degrees. And as I said, if this is an exam and it's the first time you've used your calculator, it should say radians, because the examiner has a requirement to reset the calculator. So then we can go back. So the key things of interest when you're graphing is all about the viewing window. So depending on which position of a function you're looking at, the line may go one way, may go another way, or you might not be able to see a line at all. So these values here are telling you that is what bit of the function you need to look at. So imagine if I just take these 4 values, the minus 15 and the other minus 15, and the 20 and the 15. So what that really does, it is the actual exact window we need to look at. So our calculator screen needs to be this. It needs to start at minus 15 in the x direction, end at 15, and it needs to start at minus 15, end at 20 on the y-axis. So you've got 4 values of interest. In fact, let's just have a look at the calculator. So when we go to graph, okay, we'll put a function in, then we'll look at the window. So the function is 10 cos 20x. So I'm just going to write that in. So 10 cos. I'm going to put the 20x in a bracket just because I feel more comfortable when I do that. So 20x, put that in a bracket, and then I'm going to press execute, and I'm going to press draw. So that is definitely not what I want it to be. I can see there's bits missing. So I need to get view window, which you can see is just above F3. So shift V window. I can see all values of interest. You've got X min, you have max, which actually just means X max is maximum X. Scale and dot are not particularly important. So Y min and max. And they are your 4 values, and you can see them right in front of you. They are here. This is X min, minus 15, should be minus 15. X max should be 15, Y min is minus 15, and Y max is 20. You can see right now they're all either minus 6.3 to 6.3, so we're not looking at the part of the function that we've been asked to look at. So you need to get your view window right. So minus 15, 15, skip scale, skip dot, and you've got minus 15, 20, and then we draw, and this looks more like it. This is showing me key points. Now, one thing I should note, and this happens quite a lot, if you're sort of now tempted to sort of use these arrows to move around, just be careful, because if you ever change the screen, you are automatically altering the view window. So it's safer at this point not to touch those arrows until you've got a reason to touch them, e.g. if you're navigating between features that you've solved to find. So the safest of just leave it. Right now, this is exactly that screen. So I'm just going to get rid of these lines. And so the first bit, what you need to do is transfer what you can see on the calculator screen onto the whiteboard. So I can see, remember this is 20 at the top, it looks like I've got a point there. So this graph kind of goes down to a minimum, this is a local minimum, and it goes up to a maximum, and it goes down to the minimum again. So I need my graph, it doesn't have to be perfect, it only says sketch, you can see the word sketch here, but it certainly needs to roughly have that shape. So it's probably going to have a point here-ish. It looks like it's got one probably somewhere around here and around here. So that's a minimum, a maximum and another minimum. And then I've got 2 points here. So I've got something probably around there, or maybe a slightly higher up, but it's not so important for these, but you do need to roughly do the right things. Something like that. So then I need to sort of get this wave feature in like this. So I need to kind of come from here down to this minimum, and then I'm going up again on this section. So up to here. That's not great. Ideally I wanted it to be a bit more curvy, but I'm just going to stick with it. And something like that. Now, that is not my favourite graph, not the best graph I've drawn by a long way. I think this bit's too straight and it probably should be a bit more curvy than that, but crucially it is definitely enough for these 3 marks. So your mark scheme is going to say something like correct basic shape. That means does it have this kind of wave thing? It will be looking then at these key points. So has it got a maximum on this axis, or it looks like it's on the axis? We'll confirm that in a while. So has it got a maximum there, and has it got 2 minima in the correct quadrant? So say you put this thing over here, that would definitely lose you a mark, but these are in the right place. And then there might be something about these, that basically these endpoints need to certainly be this side of the x-axis, but if they were a bit lower or a bit higher, that's not going to lose you a mark, I wouldn't have thought. So that's the sketching bit done. Now the second bit, part B, find the coordinates of the local maximum and minimum points. So I can see them on the curve. I've got minimum here, and there's a maximum over here. So it's really, really easy with the Casio. So to do anything like finding things like zeros or maximums or minimums or intersections, it's all in G-solve. You can see G-solve here. So I press Shift F5, and I'm going to look for this first minimum here. So I'm going to press min, and I can see it's gone straight to it, and it says x equals -9 and y equals -10. So I'm just going to write it in. So -9, -10. And now, seeing as I'm on minimum, this is where the Casio really does beat the TI. I can just use the arrows to navigate between the minimums. So now is a safe time to use the side arrows. So I'm just going to go to the right, and you can see it's gone to the other minimum. So I can see at 9 - 10, I have the other minimum. Now for the maximum, I'm going to have to search for a maximum. So Shift G-solve, and I'm looking for the maximum. And that is at 0, 10. And that, I think you'll agree, is quite an easy 3 marks. Part C, on the same diagram, sketch the graph of y equals g of x, where g of x equals the absolute value of x plus 2 for -15 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 15. So this is exactly the same domain as we had up here. We want the same diagram, so we need to put it over here. And I'm just going to go back to the calculator, and I'm going to put this new function in without removing the old one. So I'm going to press exit, and I'm going to go into y2 because I want them both on the same graph. I want them both on my calculator screen as well. And if you just look at part D, I'm going to be using both lines anyway. So what you might not know is where is the absolute value function. So it's in option, and you go to number, and it's ABS, absolute, the first one. And then it just brings up this ABS. Now I want a bracket there because it's the absolute value of x plus 2. So I'm going to put x plus 2. I'm going to close the bracket, execute, and draw. And now you can see I've got a new line. And hopefully you know enough about absolute functions, absolute value functions, to know that when it's the absolute value of the whole thing, basically that means it never goes negative. So you can see when this thing hits the x-axis, it reflects. So what would have been negative here, so this bit here would have kept going if it was just x plus 2, but what happened, we reflect that because it's the absolute value. You don't really need to know that in a calculator skills question, but it's always good if you know what's going on. So I just need to make sure the right basic thing happens. So I have it looks like it hits the x-axis somewhere in between this point and this point. So I'm just going to put it in there. I want it to go through that point. These are straight lines, so I reckon I just need to get these end points right. So if I sort of compare the height of the end point to the end of the hump, it's a little bit higher. So if I go across from the hump, maybe somewhere like that. If I go across, the other one's probably slightly higher than that, but I think if you drew it level, it probably wouldn't lose you a mark. And then I just need to join these. I've just got to make sure I've got these straight lines like this. So I just need to go nice straight line in there. Remember, you don't need to use a ruler, you just need to sketch. And there we go. And I'm just going to label these now. So that is g of x. And f of x we had before. That was the 10 cos 20x, so f of x. And that is that. So that's another, just another 1 mark for that. Part D, for 2 marks, solve f of x equals g of x. So where does this line equal that line? So as in, where is 10 cos 20x the same as the absolute value of x plus 2? So when do they give the same value? For what value of x does that happen? And you can see these functions have the same value here and here. It's basically where these lines intersect, that is when they are equal. It's when for the same value of x returns the same value of y at this point and at this point. So that is when f of x equals g of x. So you're looking at where the lines cross, you're looking for where the lines intersect. You are looking for intersections. So I'm going to find these 2 points. It's really easy on a Casio. Again, back to G solve, shift G solve, F5, and you're looking for intersect, so F5, and you can see it's gone straight to the first one, and it says x equals minus 3.94 and y equals 1.94. Now for this question, I'm not interested in the y value. It doesn't mean you won't always be interested in the y value, because it could be worded in such a way as it's to find the coordinates of the points of intersection. It doesn't say that. It just says solve f of x equals g of x. So I'm only interested in the x value. So I'm going to type in 3.94. Now you should always give these to, unless it's a whole number, or unless you've been asked to give it to a certain degree of accuracy, you should give this to 3 significant figures. And that is really important. You will lose marks if you don't do that on this type of question, probably more than any other. So minus 3.94, minus 3.94. And another thing, I've seen so many people, I'm going to write x equals minus 3.94. I've seen so many people lose marks just because they don't see the minus sign. If you look on this kid, it's quite small, and it could get kind of conflated with the equals sign there. Do look for minus signs, because I've seen so many people just not write the minus sign. Unfortunately, you get nothing for that. Right, so for the other one, I need to find this point over here. Again, I can just navigate with the side arrow, so I just go across, 1 click, and it's telling me x equals 3 and y equals 5. So I'm only interested in the x value. I just write x equals 3. You don't need to give that to 3 significant figures. It's a whole number, no problem. So that is the end of that question.